Good evening and welcome to this News9 Digital Extra here on the WTOV9 social media platforms. Myself, Dylan Cleland, evening anchor. Pleased to be joined by State Senator Michael Rulli, Republican nominee for U.S. House, Ohio District 6. So excited to have you in our digital studio tonight, Mr. Rulli. We appreciate you taking some time for us. This will be for the first time in over 10 years that Ohio 6 has an open Congress seat. Just go over some ground rules here. We have District 6 is open, as I mentioned, because Bill Johnson, of course, resigned in January to take the presidential role at Youngstown State University, thus opening up this position. This is one of two elections we're going to have. We have a special election coming up June 11th. That's 8 days from today. And Michael Rulli is facing off against Michael Kripchak. The winner will fill out the rest of that term, which goes until January of 25. And then the next term will commence. These two will square off on that ballot in the general election this November. So, Michael, it's been a busy year. You guys went from primary to special election. What have the last few months looked like for you guys?
It's been a whirlwind. It's really exciting getting a chance to know the Ohio 6 and traveling all the way down to Marietta and all the way back and getting a night's sleep and going back and doing it again.
Yeah, it's a very large district to that point. How have you been able to kind of cover some of that ground?
So it's been a really good deal. I'm lucky that my son has gotten involved in our family business, so it's really freed up my time to concentrate on the Ohio 6. And, during the primary, we made a lot of new friends and we got to fill the ground. It's a very diverse area, a lot different than Mahoning County, which is much more industrial. We've seen a lot of good farmlands and seen a lot of good people that have, they voiced their concerns and what they're interested and what they expect in this job and what they're going to demand me to do. And, everyone that is an elected official, we are in an interview for this job, and the people are our boss, so that we're interviewing right now.
And you mentioned family in there. You mentioned your son in particular, but how has your family kind of gone along with this? Responded? Obviously, you have experience in the state Senate, so they know the life of a family in politics. But this has to be a little bit different.
It is a little bit different, but I got involved in politics a lot later in life. I started running for the school board when I was in my 40s, and by my later 40s, I got elected into the Senate. So I think the first election, which, is in recent memory, I think I might be the only Republican from Youngstown in the Ohio Senate. And I think that, the Democrats didn't give that up lightly. So the family sort of got pushed into a real strong flavor of what this is all about. So I think that first year or two back when I was first in the Senate, I think it really got them used to what was ahead in the future.
Ohio District 6 is a very large area, as we mentioned, up to Mahoning and up that way where you guys are from, the whole way down south to Marietta. The Ohio Valley falls in between, and you have some family ties, a little bit of history to the Ohio Valley.
Yeah. So my mom and my wife were both born here. My wife's from New Cumberland originally, and they have family down in Ritchie and Taylor County, West Virginia. And the family was all over Weird and Still. And she has a cousin that teaches at the University of West Virginia, and lots of connection there. My grandma, my mom's mother, she lived in Mingo Junction, and we have cousins on my wife's family from Toronto. Being born in Steubenville, I got a good taste of what it was like living here. And it's interesting because it doesn't matter if you're in Martins Ferry or if you're in Wheeling, it's the same kind of a people. It's blue collar, hardworking people that just want to have a beautiful life in America.
And as we come to you here this evening, we want to remind you, please comment your questions. This is a chance to ask a candidate, a nominee that's running for Congress a question. It could be about an issue or a topic. It could be about something you've heard about them. It could be a question about their voting record. And so we really want you to chime in here this evening. We have some topics prepared, which we'll get into here in a moment. But we want you to help drive the conversation. Speaking of people,
modern era, huh? Interactive,
yeah, right?
Yeah,
exactly. That's what we're trying to do, and that's what it's important. Talking to people in politics, that's a big part of it. What have you learned when you've been out speaking with people around Ohio 6?
Well, I think that more than anything else, they want to know what my vision is for their future. People have lost hope in the Ohio 6. I was lucky when this became open. I was a big fan of Bill Johnson. I think he did an amazing job. I would hope I was one of his biggest allies. So I never considered being in Congress because I just considered Bill was doing such a great job. I was sort of had my eyes set on perhaps Secretary of State because I did a lot of work in the Ohio Senate trying to make sure that we have safe elections so everyone can believe in that. So when this opened up, I was pretty surprised. I was lucky because the Ohio 33rd, which I represent in the Ohio Senate, the entire district sits within the Ohio 6, which they said that's really unusual when that happens. But the Ohio 33rd is a lot different than the Ohio 6 because that's Columbiana, Carroll, and Mahoning County, which those three have a lot of similarities versus like if you get into Monroe or Noble or Tuscarawas, Washington County. I spent a lot of time down there, a lot of good friends down there and learning about what life's down there. I've been touring the flood sections of Marietta, and there's a lot of problems there. And their problems are going to be different than what you're experiencing in Jefferson or, what you're going to be experiencing in, even Tuscarawas, so there's a lot involved with the Ohio 6.
Talking about that, things happen, right? Flooding. We just saw that back in April here. It hit parts of our area very hard. When something like that comes up, another thing that comes to mind is East Palestine and the train derailment. Something like that comes up, people are going to come to you if you are to be elected. How are you going to take that message and go to Washington and say, hey, this happened in my district. What are you going to do for us?
Well, I think what you have to do immediately is you have to see who's the expert on it. Like with East Palestine, when that disaster happened, Monica Blaisdell and I were down there the very next day, and we followed the whole procedure. And there was so much involved with that as far as, the regulations on the trains aren't quite what they're supposed to be. They don't have enough help to actually regulate the trains. The bearings on the car started showing problem over in Damascus. And as you went through Salem, the bearings got worse and worse and went through Latonia. We have all this on like door cam, ironically. So you can see the progression of that. In hindsight, completely Monday morning quarterback. Perhaps what we should have done is once those cars ignited and there was a problem with the design of the car, where the flaps that were supposed to let that gas out gently, so there should have never been explosion, that didn't work. So like, once again, Monday morning quarterback, there's things we could have done. We could have put it out like a grease fire where we could have bought in 300 truckloads of sand and with backloaders and skid loaders, and we could have actually suffocated the fire so you wouldn't have the explosion. You wouldn't have the 1 million gallons that infiltrated the waterways. But you learn from that. Now, as far as the waters flooding in Marietta goes, the Army Corps of Engineers is operating off of a 1934 handbook. And so we got problems over there. And I learned a lot of this through Don Jones, who's a state rep down here in Harrison County. He's one of my best friends in the state house. So I wasn't an expert at this. I'm an expert on the deli counter and I'm a meat cutter in our family grocery stores, but I wasn't an expert at flooding down in Marietta. And then you realize that, you have a series of lakes that go all the way through, like, Jefferson County and all the way down the river. And a lot of these lakes are supposed to be 2 to 3 feet under the water level, getting ready for the defrost of winter. That wasn't done. Then when Pittsburgh opened up the floodgates, there wasn't the communication down with Marietta. There's a lot of different elements that go into these problems, and it's a lot of hard work. And it's not flashy work that you're going to get, a lot of elected officials want to go cut ribbons and they want to put on these suits and they want to act like there's something, but that's not what this job's about. This job's about the hard work. And if you're not an expert on the subject, find out who is. And people like Don Jones educated me. The 3 commissioners in Washington County, Kevin Ritter in particular, give him a shout out. These guys really took me to task. Jesse is he's the Port Authority guy down there. And they explained to me what happened and why it keeps flooding. And every 6 or 7 years it happens again. And it's, we have to do better.
Let's talk about a few different issues that you've spoke about during your campaign. One of those being oil and gas. Representative Johnson served on the House Energy and Commerce Committee with the oil and gas resources in Eastern Ohio. What's the potential for it there? And is this something you would like to continue with?
Oh, that's a dream. If I could get on, that's hard. It's an A committee, so it's really hard to get on. I'm not afraid to do a lot of hard work to see if that could be a possibility. I'm not shy. I'm unapologetic. I'm a drill baby, drill kind of a guy. I think we should be drilling everywhere. I think we should be protecting the landowners too, to make sure they have the right lease to make sure they're not nickel-dimed in those leases and they get the money that's promised to them. But we got to be real about natural gas. So I've been in the state Senate now for almost 6 years. I like energy as far as all of the above. If you want to talk about hydro, you want to talk about solar, if you want to talk about wind, we could do that. But reality is, and the opposition party does not agree with me, reality is this grid is not ready for that. When you look at the bad examples like someone like Governor Newsom has done, Governor Newsom has put a stop on any new gas stations being built in the state of California. That to me is pure insanity. And then he says that you have to go buy an electric vehicle. And then there's rolling blackouts. So he says you can't charge your electric vehicle, so you're going to lose your job because you don't have a vehicle that could go to work. The thought process of the opposition party has to be stopped. The only way to secure our grid and make sure there's no blackouts is to have more and more and more power stations all the way throughout the Ohio 6. Whether you're in Western Pennsylvania or Northern West Virginia or this Eastern Ohio of the Ohio 6, the East Coast of Ohio, natural gas is the way. There's more gas underneath this ground in the Utica and Marcellus Shale to supply the entire earth for 500 years. You know, that's a dream of mine. If we could be drilling nonstop, the power plant we have in Wellsville, the 2 power plants that we have in Lordstown, each one of those power plants produces enough electricity for 1.3 million homes. Let that sink in. Those 3 power plants alone are almost operating 5 million homes. If we build another 10 of those, we'll have enough electricity to export it to every state you can imagine, whether it's Indiana, our friends in Kentucky, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, the state up north, we can't say that name, but any one of those states will have all the electricity they want, and it'll create more jobs. But what even gets more exciting than that, say if in Steubenville, let's just start with Big Red over here. If I build a power plant in Steubenville, and I work with the Port Authority, and we start putting cranes along the Ohio River, you have Route 11, and right to the north, you have 80 and you have 90. The 2 biggest arteries of the country, with the 2nd biggest river of the country, above the Appalachians, so the trucking routes are incredible. If we go across the state line to our friends in Pennsylvania, and we take a tour of the Monaca cracker plant, it's incredible. It's the largest cracker plant outside of Louisiana or Texas. Now, we already have some money still put away for that Belmont cracker plant.
Well, let me ask you. Well, I'll stop you there because that's been a topic people in
one
Ohio,
of my favorite.
In Ohio 6 and Belmont County. We've been hearing about it. It's been in place. It's been talked about. But we haven't seen the progress.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that? And if you were to be elected, what would you do to get that done even quicker? Because people have been waiting for 5-10 years now.
JP Dutton, I mean, the commissioner over in Belmont County, I believe, he has educated me on this. So what happened was once the pandemic was hitting, it was the South Koreans, actually, it was $11 billion that was put away. The South Koreans got cold feet because of the pandemic, and they were shutting down the government. They were shutting down everything. So they pulled their $4 billion out. I'm under the understanding right now there's $5 to $6 billion still there for the next 18 months. We have to figure out a way, and I'm going to look to my friends that helped me build the power plants up in Boston, Massachusetts, to see if we could have the funding to get that cracker plant up and running. If we can do that and we can build these power plants throughout the Ohio 6, we could start an energy circle, the likes that the world has never seen. And this is jobs for the future. I have friends that own plastic manufacturing. In fact, one of my friends owns Dinosaur up in the Youngstown area. We could get them to relocate there, and we could have jobs, and we could create a whole new hope for the future for everybody. And you know what the best part about that is? If these cracker plants are up and running and these power plants are up and running, we literally could put the Middle East out of business. Why does that warm my heart? I don't ever want to see another boy or girl going to fight a war we have no business in the Middle East for oil and gas. Right now, Joe Biden's in a problem because OPEC just announced yesterday that they're going to stop their production. They're going to cut it in half. You're going to see gas prices double. This is Joe Biden's future. Now, if we were producing all this electricity and all this natural gas right here, we wouldn't have to worry about that. But we do, because on day number 1, Joe Biden shut down the Keystone Pipeline. He put a stop on exporting our beautiful natural wet gas and dry gas overseas because he wants to give that business to Vladimir Putin. Now, that's just sad, and that doesn't make common sense to me.
Let's circle back to this idea of building power plants in Ohio 6, though. How can funding seems to be the big hole, is the issue. You need the money to build these plants. How can we get some of that funding to a place that for a while has been called Forgotten Ohio in Eastern Ohio? So it's the vision. You're explaining it. It's there. People can understand that, but getting that money to Ohio 6 to get this done is the holdup. How do you get that done?
I got good news for you. So one of my best friends, and I'm just going to do an embarrassing shout out to him, Bill Siderwitz, is up in Boston. This guy's the #1 guy in the country, and his 2 competitors, he's made me friends with them because he likes my vision. And so Bill's a little bit towards the twilight of his career. And these 2 guys, one's I believe in Chicago and the other one's in California. These are the 3 biggest guys for financing power plants. So what we have to do is, I already did a couple steps. So I just passed this. It's called Senate Resolution 121. And what Senate Resolution 121 does, and it has a perfect 32-0 vote out of the Ohio Senate. That means every Democrat and every Republican voted for it. Now, I did one 2 years ago that made natural gas official clean energy of Ohio, and that was a 32-1 vote. This new Senate Resolution 121, it lays out a blueprint of how friendly Ohio is going to be towards natural gas. We're not going to put these regulations, once you get these pads up and running, that we're going to put all these nickel and dime EPA regulations to stop the progression of natural gas. We're going to do the opposite. Because if you're about to put $1.5 billion in a power plant, you want to make sure that this state's going to play with you. You don't invest for like, I'm going to put $1.5 billion in a power plant in November. You're going to be like, I'm going to put $1.5 billion in 2026, 2027, 2028. And if they don't see things in the state house going along with that, they're going to be shy. They might go to Pennsylvania. They might go to West Virginia, someone that's going to play ball with them a little bit. Well, I got to tell them the ballpark's open here in Ohio.
We're talking to Michael Rulli, Republican nominee for Ohio District 6 here in the News 9 Digital Content Center, live on X, YouTube, and Facebook tonight. We're glad you're joining us. We are about a third of a way through our program already, and we just hit on one topic. Yeah. So that's pretty wild. We do have a question from Maureen Howard, who's watching. Maureen asks, how do you plan to protect Social Security and Medicare?
Well, that's a great question. And I actually have a good answer for this. So we have all these different departments. You know, you have Department of Commerce, you have EPA, you have education. What if, now just hear me out here. What if we take all those departments and we cut their budget by just 3%? I'm not talking about shutting down the departments. I'm just talking, give them a nice, healthy haircut. And if we do that with 3%, you're talking tens and tens of billions of dollars that we could put in escrow to the side. So in 8 or 9 years, when Social Security is out of money and everyone goes, oh my God. And unfortunately for me, I'm going to be in that category that we have maybe 200 or 300 billions because we gave everyone a healthy haircut. Because guess what? The bureaucracy that goes to those jobs, most of them are still in pajamas working from home. You guys aren't working from home. So why don't we give them a nice haircut, take that money, put it to the side, and let's use that about 8 or 9 years when we really need it.
Talking about Medicare, let's stick along the lines of healthcare. And when we get into that, we start to talk about fentanyl and mental health and all of that. So let's kind of start with fentanyl. I want to ask you about it's made its way into District 6. It's here. It's up and down the river. And it's quite literally making it by way of the river and the big interstates. We have 70 running right through 71, 70. I mean, it continues, you know, there's several interstates. How can this be stopped when there is such easy access for it to come in?
So the question I would ask everyone that's listening right now, did we have this fentanyl problem when Donald Trump was our president? And it was a tiny problem. Joe Biden put it on steroids, and I'm putting this right in his lap because he opened that border wide open. We don't know what's coming through. There's more fentanyl coming through that border right from China because China's our true enemy. They are the devil, and they're throwing that fentanyl right through that border. And yet the opposition party says to me, they have the gall to say to my face that, oh, we don't have a border problem. Oh, the border's not open. The border's wide open. It's been more wide open right now than it ever has been in our life. And that's where this fentanyl is coming from. And it's killing our kids. And I'm not going to put up with it. I don't care if we have to put the military on the border to shut this down. We will do that. We will do that. I think we should put a whole division on the border. And actually, we should take out the cartel too. We have the capability. We have special forces. We could literally take out the cartel and we could shut down that border with this fentanyl problem. You know what they say in the opposition party, and my good friends are on the Republican side that are watching this right now. I'm going to give you some food for thought. Joe Biden right now is saying that he's going to do an executive order to shut down the border, but yet he had the gall to have a border bill loaded with more fat than you could shake a stick at, financing Ukrainian wars and all wars all over the country, when all he had to do was use an executive order like the Honorable Donald Trump did. Remain in Mexico, Donald Trump. He made a deal with Mexico. The southern border of Mexico was shut down. So this way, Mexico didn't have to worry with that influx. You know what else we're going to have to do? We're going to have to talk about an ugly subject. We're going to have to talk about deportation. We're going to need to deport. If you're not here, all my grandparents were born overseas. They celebrated being an American. They would take their Ellis Island papers and their immigration papers when they became illegal, and they put them on the wall in the most fancy frames you could imagine. But yet we're celebrating an open border, and then we wonder why our kids are dying of fentanyl. That fentanyl is coming through the border. Now, there's another part where we have to deal with the mental health of our kids and childhood trauma, and we got to get in the mix with that, which is a different aspect of it.
Before we get into that, though, I do want to. Before fentanyl, it was heroin. I mean, there's been an opioid There's been an opioid crisis here before the current, before the previous president even. The solution is what we're looking for, you know, and it's getting into these smaller communities, you know. So is
Toronto, Mingo Junction, Martins Ferry,
up and down the river, it's getting into these areas. So is it, maybe we need to attack it on a smaller level? Is that something you would be open to?
Well, you know, I love Bible verses, and I'm going to say a real simple Bible verse. Idle hands is the devil's work. If these kids don't have a job to go to, and they don't have a reason, and they don't have the American dream in front of them, you're going to find something to do with your time. Now, whether that's cocaine or whether that's meth or whether that's heroin or whether that's fentanyl, you will gravitate to something to numb the existence of what your reality is. That's up to guys that are elected, the guys that wear the suits and think they're actually doing something. Get some jobs here. Create this new thing. You know, the American dream was supposed to be you're going to do better than your mom and dad. So you know what? If your mom and dad has a 2-bedroom house, I want you to make enough money to have a 4-bedroom house. I want you to have that golden retriever. I want you to have that 350 Ford pickup truck with all the bells and whistles on it. You know how we could do that? You don't even need to go to college. We're going to get you in the trades. I'm going to teach you how to be a welder. I'm going to teach you how to work on those well pads. I'm going to teach you how to run skid loaders, pipe fitters, electricians, carpenters. And guess what? You're not going to have no student loan. There ain't going to be no Biden forgiving student loan for all the working guys to pay for. The working guys, they don't have no student loan, but yet they want us to pay for this you know, Marie Antoinette class that doesn't even exist in Ohio 6, you know. But if we could get these kids into the trades and we could give them a purpose. If you're a welder, say you graduate from Big Red and you go into welding, you stay off drugs and you got no problem with the alarm clock going off at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning, get in your truck. It might be beat up right now, but go to work. Within 3 to 5 years, you're going to be making $100,000. And if you really are aggressive, you could be making $200,000 in 7 or 8 years. Now, could you imagine the life you have? There ain't going to be no time for drugs.
Let's talk about the need for these jobs, because this is another topic that we wanted to hit on. Obviously, you're a proponent of skill-based jobs, labor-based jobs. You might not need to go to college. You might not have to encounter the financial aspect of it. Community colleges, tech schools. Recently, you know, here in Jefferson County, there's potential. It looks like EGCC might be going away, but these places are important. And there's, you know, career centers, whatever you might choose to go into and where you might go to get this education, you can get it in a short amount of time, and then you can go and work. How much of a need is there for that right now?
All the need. It's you. I think you right there with that statement. I think you just laid out the future. You know, it doesn't matter what company I talk to. I need workers. I need good workers. Now you look at Big Red right now, they got that STEM program going on. That's incredible. If I was retired right now and you said, what's one of your highlights of your career in the Senate? I would say it's Utica Shell Academy in Salineville, Ohio. What we're doing is we're not waiting for you to graduate. We're talking to you when you're in 6th or 7th grade, because by the time you're in 8th or 9th grade, the bad habits are already there. You're hanging with the wrong crowd. You're getting into trouble. You're not going to school. You're looking for drugs. You're doing all these different, you know, shenanigans that you shouldn't be doing. But if we get you in 6th or 7th grade and we could plant that beautiful seed that there could be more. Big Red's doing it with that STEM program right now and that beautiful school they're building. We got to get these kids job ready, and we got to sow that seed in 6th or 7th grade. So by the time they're in 8th or 9th grade, they're off the ground running. And there's going to be millions of employers out there that are going to want to hire you on the spot.
Do you think there need to be any changes to the modern day education system as it pertains to the younger, lower grades in order to maybe set someone up for that?
Yeah, that absolutely. I got outside the box. I was raised in public school, and I was school board president of a public school. My daughter goes to Catholic school. I like the voucher program we did in the Ohio Senate, and we did Ed Choice, because if you want to send your kid to a Christian school, a Montessori school, if you want to go to any school you want to go to, a Catholic school, if you want to do homeschool, I think homeschool could be cool. If you want to go to a trade school, you should have a voucher that could follow that kid around to get you to the right education that you want. There might be a kid that wants to go become a veterinarian, but there might be a kid that wants to become a welder. We need to figure that out. But the days of this cookie cutter approach that you go to school, you go get your 4 years, that's dead. That isn't the American dream anymore. Now, there might be 10 or 20% of the high school graduates that still want to do that. And we all love our Ohio universities and Kent State and Youngstown State. Those are great choices for certain people. If you want to become an accountant, you want to become an engineer, you want to become something that needs that higher ed aspect of it. But it's not 100% of our kids. It's 20% of our kids.
We do have a question about the amendment that was recently passed to the Constitution for reproductive rights. And I'm going to pop it up and phrase it a little bit differently. But where does that stand, and where are you guys at with that?
Well, I'm pro-life. I mean, I'm a co-sponsor of the Heartbeat Bill. My good friend Christina Rogner from Hudson, Ohio, she wrote that. I mean, I'm pro-life till I die. I'm pro-gun. I'm pro-Trump. I'm a Trump delegate. So I'm unabashed. I mean, I feel that life is very precious. We lost a constitutional amendment. People spoke. People voted for the constitutional amendment. We accept that. The nice thing about being Republicans, contrary to popular belief by the fake news media out there, is that we do accept elections. If we lost the election with that down the road, I don't know where that takes us. But I thought the Heartbeat Bill was, I thought that was fair. You had 6 or 7 weeks to see if the pregnancy was wanted, but we lost at the ballot box. Now, there is a little caveat with that. We had foreign money get into issue 1 and issue 2. Now, foreign money is not allowed to give money to any elected official in Ohio, but it is allowed to give money to a ballot initiative. We fixed that in the Ohio Senate right now. We just fixed it last week. We voted, we had Teresa Gavarone she's out of Bowling Green, Ohio. And we had our next president of the Ohio Senate, Rob McCauley. They had a bill that basically follows real law that says foreign money can't get involved into our elections, because you're going to have the Chinese there. You're going to have the Iranians there, and you have all these bad players in there.
I did not want to get off the original topic, but I did want to get that question in, and thank you to Kathy for asking that question. Let's go with back to education here briefly. So you talked a little bit about trying to get into those schools and talk to kids. What about funding? Do you think it's equitable right now?
For what aspect of funding?
School as it pertains to schools. What?
So right now, I mean, so when I got involved in the Latonia School Board, we had a brand new school that Newt Gingrich helped us build because his ex-wife was from Latonia. So $40 million school was beautiful. We had an incompetent whole school board that put it $2 million in debt within 3 years. That's embarrassing, because these guys don't run it like a business. They think that the money's unlimited. And then they constantly went back and tried to get levies passed. They failed 7 levies. They were like 11 mills. It was embarrassing. That's how I got on the school board. And then I got all my business friends to get on the school board, and we got rid of all of them, and we ran it like a business. Within 8 years, we have $8 million in the black. And you do that because you have to be good shepherds of the money. You look for grants. We had to sign a gas lease that never even drilled, $800,000 of free money coming in, and we turned that school around. And that's the way you have to look at it. The state of Ohio gives, I don't know, it's probably about $7,600 per student in Ohio to go get educated. Now, in Latonia or in Salem or in Crestview or in Wellsville, most of us educate our kids between $8,500 to $11,000 per pupil per student. Now, let me give some shocking news to you. You look at East Cleveland, you look at Lorain, you look at Youngstown, you look at Toledo, you look at Dayton, you look at Columbus, $30,000 per kid. What's going on here? I mean, that's insanity. And then they're teaching them this woke stuff, which I don't believe in, because I think you should be reading, writing, arithmetic. It shouldn't be, propaganda against our country saying our country's flawed. It should be back to normal like it used to be.
Let's go to the budget and economy and talk a little bit about that. By the way, if you're just joining us, we're talking to Republican nominee for U.S. House, Ohio District 6. The congressional special election is a week from tomorrow, so June 11th. You want to go out and vote? It's important to vote. That we have these conversations. We get views on both sides. The main thing is you need to go and voice your opinion and cast your ballot. So you can do that next week, of course, on election day.
Why it's so important to vote on next Tuesday. So the balance of the House is next Tuesday. Right now, if you're a Republican, the call to action is stronger than it ever has been ever. We only have one seat. I'm going to be the second seat. So you see the persecution of President Trump. You see all these different things they're doing. If you don't get out next Tuesday, we stand a chance of losing the seat. You got to get out and vote if you like the Republican way of life.
And so, again, get out and vote, no matter which side you're on. From my perspective, go out and you want to cast your ballot. Now, let's talk about the budget and economy, like we had mentioned. The economy has made, some might say, a little bit of progress since COVID-19. However, we are still seeing millions of Americans affected at the grocery store. Of course, your family business, a grocer yourself, you've seen that firsthand, and the price at the pump. What will you do to try and lessen the burden on families' wallets?
Well, like I was saying before with the haircut, we got to cut all these departments. Every single department needs a haircut. Instead of giving them a haircut, they always raise their budget by 5 to 8%. And then here's another thing. Quit printing money. And I'm not just blaming the Biden administration. Of course, most of it is their fault. But if you go back the last 3 administrations, our printing presses are going nonstop. It was only 2 decades ago, we were like $6 trillion in debt, and now we're $34 trillion in debt. We're destroying the dollar. The same life that you lived underneath President Trump today is going to cost the average family almost $14,000 more for the same exact car. I don't care if you have a Buick, if your kid's going to preschool. I don't care, your car, your insurance, everything that you do, the same life is costing you $14,000 more. My question to you, are you making $14,000 more than you did 5 years ago? The answer is no. So quit printing money, quit spending money in your own personal house. If you can't live inside your means, you get with your spouse and you say, what can we cut? What can we cut back on? Maybe we're not going to go out to eat every Friday. Maybe we're going to cook at home. Maybe we're not going to go on the vacation this year. Maybe we're just going to stay at home and we're going to drive around to some of the parks around here. You stay within your means. And this country has a spending problem like I've never seen in my entire life, and it needs to be addressed.
How would you address it?
Well, like I said, I think 3 to 4% cut on every single department in the federal government. And here I heard something else since I got a chance to hang out with Jim Jordan a lot. He's a good friend of mine and has endorsed me. So Jim and I were talking about this. What if we started taking some of these departments, like the Department of Education or the Department of Commerce or the Department of any department? What happens if we move them out of Washington? Maybe put one in Buffalo, put one in Detroit, put one in Atlanta, move them out of Washington. Let's get rid of this lobbyist life that we have out there. And let's cut the fat of these departments. Let's let them live within their means. And if they can't live within their means, like Javier down in South America, we're going to get rid of you. If you can't exist within your means, you shouldn't be there, because I'm not going to let these guys working 60 hours a week with no hope of anything, because their insurance is killing them. The gas pump's killing them. Grocery prices are killing them. Everything's killing these guys. They have no money to give the government. It needs to be addressed.
We talked a little bit about economic development when we were talking about the cracker plants and that potential here, but you go up and down Ohio 6 along the river, you see a lot of old former steel sites. Weirton Steel over just across the river, just shutting down, idling a few weeks ago. What's the next step to try to get some businesses, draw some larger companies back to these properties that can be easily, with some funding, flipped, bring jobs, that type of idea? What's your vision for some of these properties?
There's a couple different angles you could go to. I'm a Youngstown guy, Sheehan too. We united, most of my relatives work there. My wife's father, Gary, if you're listening in New Cumberland, a big shout out to you, my friend. My father-in-law is a great man. He worked his entire life at Weirton and still was promised this huge pension, and it was just taken away from him. And they cut these guys off in the knees. There are ways, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, where if we had the power plant and we had the workforce ready, workforce ready, that companies, if you build it, they will come. But then there's another different aspect of it. When you look at the Intel plant's going to build these chips, okay? And it is going to be one of the biggest projects ever. So if you're a carpenter or if you're a pipe fitter, there is so much work for you to do. If you don't find the work here, we can ship you right to Intel and you're going to get paid for your traveling expenses. Developing Ohio as a tech hub is really exciting. We've done things in the Ohio Senate as far as brain trust to keep them to stay in Ohio after they graduate with incentive programs. If they do a 10-year commitment to get them to be here and really bring Ohio back to the great state that it is. Because in my opinion, I don't care about the other 49 states. There's one state. We are the true state. We're Ohio.
Infrastructure, another big topic, especially around here. Water lines that are 100 years old in some cases, sewer projects. There's always something going on here in Steubenville in specific. That's where I'm at. I drive around and see it, but it's happening again all throughout the district. These are projects that need to be done. People need these things to survive. And we talk about broadband a lot, but I mean, people need the water. People need, that type of stuff first. How will you portray this as a big issue to colleagues in DC, rather, if elected, and maybe secure some of the necessary funding?
I think is number one, because the comment I made, if a builder and they will come. Some people on my side of the aisle, they don't believe in earmarks, and if the earmarks are being played in all 50 states, let's bring them to the Ohio 6 and let's do it there. Let's fix everything. Let's fix every road. Let's fix every gas line, every water line, every sewer treatment line. Let's fix those lakes to prevent the flooding. Let's get everything ground ready. I did 3 different brownfields bill when I was in the Ohio Senate. I'm not afraid to do work. I have 6 bills that are signed into law by Governor DeWine. Each one of those bills, I have 300 or 400 man hours wrapped up into them. It's a tremendous problem when you legislate to get bills to the end. And the brownfield bills I've done, I think, been more proud of than ever. How do I know this? You come up to Youngstown, I'll give you a tour. Anyone on here, get a hold of my office. We'll tour all these old sheet and tube sites, all these different factories that were shut down. Now, when a new company comes and they look in Steubenville or they look in Mingo Junction or Toronto or Martins Ferry, they want to see ground that is shovel ready. They don't want to say, hey, I got to go spend $1 million cleaning up all this oil and this, heavy metals in there. We got to do that as government. We got to make this ground ready, shovel ready from day number 1. So when these Chamber of Commerce are dining these fancy suits from around the country to come to Ohio, we could show them a site we're proud of, a green site that we're ready to go.
Do you think the question or the message for that resonates the same in DC? Is it the same process as it would be in Columbus? Or do you think, you mentioned it earlier, working in with, you have lobbyists involved, you have a lot of different entities involved in DC, and you have to say, hey, my sliver of Ohio is what needs this money, and this is what it's for. So do you have to change that message?
Well, I think that's where synergy comes into play. And right now, when you look at the Ohio delegation, these are guys that I've become very good friends with. And, Max Miller out there, I'll give a shout out to him. Mike Carey is solid gold. The guy's one of the best human beings, and he's a coal guy. And let me tell you something. I like clean coal, but I like dirty coal. Now, the opposition gets freaked out when you say dirty coal. Should never shut down a single coal plant in this country when you allow China and Germany and you allow Russia to celebrate building new coal plants, and you want to celebrate ripping down our coal plants. Shame on the Democrats. Shame on them. They're clueless. Now, Mike Carey was a cool guy. He gets it. Max Miller's close with President Trump. He gets it. Dave Joyce is all into natural gas. He gets it. Mike Turner, Warren Davidson. Now think about what I'm saying. Now I'm clustering together a bunch of congressmen from the Ohio delegation. Opposition party can't do that because we have a supermajority delegation in Ohio. So we're going to move as one body in Ohio. That's how we got Intel done. That's how we're going to get other programs done. And you know what? They're not going to want to hear these greenie wokies trying to come in here and talk about natural gas when they rather, you know what's funny? They build wind power plants off of Cape Cod. You guys want to go on vacation? Go up to Cape Cod and look at these wind turbines that are out in the middle of the ocean. Do you know who's protesting those right now? Look at the problem they have. Greenpeace, because it's killing the whales. Look at these solar fields. These solar fields, they have these solar fields. You get a hailstorm, takes out the whole solar field, ruins our tillable land. All the farmers out there. I'm a Farm Bureau member. Been one since 92. I don't want no China buying any of our farmlands. I mean, that's a felony right there. I mean, I would rather die than let China own 1 acre of our farmland. We got to protect the grid. We got to protect Ohio. We will move forward with Washington lobbyists when Ohio moves as one delegation. And that's all those friends I mentioned, whether it's Warren Davidson, Max Miller, Mike Kerrigan, big shout out to him, Turner, who's holds one of the biggest gavels in the entire country. I mean, that's how you do it, my friend.
All right, so we have a couple of questions from viewers I want to get to, and then I have some rapid fire for the end.
Well, I like rapid fire.
We'll save that for like the last 5 minutes or so. But we do have some comments we want to get to. Tim Meyer asks, "What's your stance on Ohio House Bill 51?"
Ohio House Bill 51.
Yes, and so that is dealing with local and state law enforcement and how it operates. It would enact the Second Amendment Preservation Act. So this was introduced earlier.
It hasn't come to Ohio Senate. So just so the
correct. Yeah.
So the public knows that at any given time in a General Assembly, which is a 2-year span, there's 3,000 bills in the Ohio Senate. I vote with law enforcement every single time. I've never voted against law enforcement, and I'm a Golden Eagle lifelong member of the NRA. I mean, I am, all you have to do is look at my social media or look at my newsreel. I'm pro-gun all the way, and I'm pro-law enforcement more than that. I support the blue till the day I die. Once that bill comes over to the Ohio Senate, if there's anything that's anti-law enforcement, it's out the door. We'll never vote against law enforcement. Proud to be blue.
We have another one for you. Are you okay with American veterans benefits going to Israeli soldiers? Are you okay with AIPAC?
Well, listen, you gotta help Israel with their dome. You gotta, let's be real. Palestine's wrong. Okay, so I don't care who knows. Palestine, with October 7th, invaded Israel. Now we gotta be careful with money. Look at Ukraine; it's an endless war. And where's the oversight with Ukraine? Where's the oversight with all these oligarchs? Is it actually going to the military use? I hope so. We need to do better showing the public over there where that money's going. We'll never take a penny off of a veteran in Ohio. And Ohio veterans first, make sure they're taken care of. We have to address the homeless problem with them before we send any money to anywhere.
Another question we talked about a little bit earlier, but I'm going to bring it up again. How do you protect retired seniors, Social Security, Medicare? We touched on that. You talked about.
You got to have a rainy day fund down the road to protect with the money that's going to run out in 8 years. And you could do that with the haircut. No one's going to like this haircut, especially lobbyists. The thing is, when you're an elected official, don't be afraid to lose, if you got to go there and do the right thing, if I have to go there and have to fight the lobbyists because I want to protect Social Security, or if I have to go there and fight the lobbyists because I want to protect your gun rights, and Joe Biden said he wants to take your guns away. They said the ugliest part stuff out loud, and the opposition party says there's no problem at the border. They said there's inflation's a daydream. They said the pain that you're feeling doesn't exist. They say that, all these things don't exist. Don't believe what you see and what you feel. Believe what we tell you. I mean, we got to vote red, and we got to vote red right now.
So we are talking to Republican nominee Michael Rulli for U.S. House, Ohio District 6. We got about 15 minutes or so left, maybe a little bit less if we wrap up sooner. A couple of notes that I want to share. Of course, the special election coming up next week, June 11th. Want to encourage everyone to go out and vote, no matter red, blue, you want to go vote. And
red.
And beyond that, we want to also mention that Thursday night we will have Democrat Michael Kripchak joining us here in the News 9 Content Center. So depending on what side you're on, if you want to get both perspectives, you want to tune in for that as well. But let's talk a little bit about just the area. You've a lot of experience up north, Latonia. You on the school board. You've lived up that way for a while. The grocery store chain. What is it about Ohio? What is it about Eastern Ohio people that you like, and why does this area work so well for you and your family?
Our East Ohio people are the best on earth. I mean, you know why? Because we're real. What you see is what you get. I mean, I don't care. I don't care if it's Friday night football lights. We love football. We love our fish fries. We love church on Sunday. We love spaghetti dinners. We work all week, go to the beer garden afterwards. You grab a beer with your buddy. You contemplate life. You you just want to be treated right, and we don't want to worry about whether you're going to send my boy or daughter away for a war. And we don't want to worry about, oh my God, I can't afford my insurance. You know what? You should be able to buy that muscle car you always wanted. You should be able to send your kid to Ohio State or to a trade school if you want. You shouldn't have to worry about all these things. You got to get the government out of your life. Government is supposed to be this loosely group that just protects your rights. My rights end where your rights begin. Now, the Democrats are independents out there. I'm telling you, you should vote for me too, because I'm going to protect all Ohioans. But I do feel we need less government. This government's gotten out of control. I mean, it's just everywhere. It's on all aspects of your life. It's poisoning your kids. I mean, sometimes I can't even believe I'm part of the government, because it really does need to be completely restructured.
Mel Woods just asked, and you mentioned with Weirton Steele, and I believe it was your father-in-law with the pension.
Gary Jackson, yeah.
What are your thoughts on keeping or restoring union pensions then?
Oh, we got to take care of that. We saw that at the Delphi plant up in the Youngstown area. Here's the problem that the working guy has. You're really up against the firing squad, because the government can't stand you and the corporations can't stand you. So like, if a corporation has a nest egg of money and they have someone that's in charge of it, an accountant that doesn't know what they're doing with the numbers, and you lose billions of dollars in this retirement pocket, you should go to jail for the rest of your life. That's a felony. And then the government should probably step in. In Ohio, we have the rainy day fund. We got about $5 billion in the rainy day fund. We cannot, I mean, what a torturous thing. What a evil devil thing to do, to tell you to go work 40 years at Weird and Still, go work 40 years at Sheet and Tube, go work 40 years at Lordstown Motors, and then at the end say that to you. Thanks, but no thanks. I mean, what is that? What kind of society we live in? I mean, you might as well go live in China. I think it's embarrassing. I think you always got to protect these retirement funds. And I think there should be federal prosecution for anyone that's at the helm of these retirement funds and they fail. Because I know with Weird and Still, they had billions of dollars in that fund. But they want you to pay the whole way through. I mean, something needs to be done.
We got a few minutes left. We want to thank everyone for tuning in, for your comments, your questions. We've had a number of them. We appreciate them. Some passionate opinions on both sides of the issues that we've been discussing here. Let's get into a couple of these questions that I had. I wanted to make them quick, but there might be some time for elaboration on a couple of them. What is one issue that you want to get to work on if you were elected on June 11th? Off the bat.
Probably the biggest issue I'd love. I mean, if God came down and said, I could let you fix one thing, I would love to build that cracker plant in Belmont. I think if I could find that money to build that and tie that in with Monaca, I think it would be the field of dreams. I think everything would come. But after that, I want to address the children. I want these kids in the Ohio 6 to have dreams. I want them to build a dream again. I want them to be able to have a job. I want them to have hope. I want them to stay here. I want to quit. When I first ran for the Ohio Senate, they said, what's the number one thing you want to do? And the year before I decided to run, I went to a graduation party in Struthers, Ohio, go Wildcats. And out in Struthers, Ohio, this kid had just graduated from Ohio State University and got a job in Chicago. And everyone was said, they made me sick. They said, you made it out of here. You know that little sticker you see on the back of these cars that says stuck in Ohio? That makes me want to pull over and throw up. Blessed in Ohio. It's the greatest state. OHIO. It's the greatest state in the union. We solve all the problems. We have to change the culture in the Ohio 6. We have to have these kids want to stay here, and we have to give them a reason to stay here.
You started out with that cracker plant. I know we keep going back to it. Realistically, if that funding were to be put in place, however long that takes, right? How quick could from one... Where's that site at in terms of like being ready to roll if that funding would be?
So you have I think it's 18 months. JP said that to get the rest of the funding. Once that happens, you would break ground within 4 months. It'd be that quick because
it would go up quick, I would imagine. After that,
it was big. It's it's an $11 billion plant. So I mean, it would take 2 or 3 years of constructions. But think about that. Between Intel and that, I mean, if you once again,
you're talking construction jobs, temporary.
You got
you're talking permanent jobs.
That's right.
There's a lot of potential for sure. What is one area that might take some time to address once you were if you were to get into office? Maybe it's something you got to work with colleagues from, either across the aisle or other states on.
Well, I think the border, like I said, I'm going to the convention this summer to put Trump as the president of the United States, which will be fact soon, and the opposition could go cry a river. It's going to happen. Trump's going to be the president. But more than that, the main reason why we need Trump the president, that border has to be, we only have two things to do. Shut down the border, get rid of this inflation, quit printing money, give every department a haircut like they've never seen and let them cry a river, and shut down that border. If we do that, the slate is going to be clean and we're going to have a beautiful tomorrow. And Trump's the only one that can do that. That border has to be shut down. That's the top priority. And if I have to reach across the aisle and get some of my opponents, my opposition, if I have to get them on board, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. If we have to increase legal, keyword here is legal. You got to come across legal. If we have to increase that number to shut down the border, we can do that. But we don't even know who's in here. They think there's over 400 on the #1 watch list of the FBI of pure terrorists coming from Yemen, coming from Iran, coming from Iraq, coming from the worst players of earth are coming through our border. You tell me there's not going to be a 9/11 in the future? There absolutely will be. It's just a matter of time. We have enemies within right now because of that border. And if it kills me, I'm going to shut it.
One other item that I wanted to ask about, I didn't have scripted here. There's been, it's very, it's one we talk about here a lot. It just, the relationship with what would be your colleagues in West Virginia, in the Panhandle, the ones that work there, the ones in Western Pennsylvania. There's a potential for a lot of good work to be done there. It's been done in the past, collaboration on different things. What's your view on that? And do you see yourself being able to work with them to be able to make things happen, maybe not just for Ohio, but if something happens in West Virginia and it can benefit Ohio?
I'm going to utilize my wife's family. If Kelly's watching, I'm going to utilize her family for any connections I have. One of my best friends, dear friends that start Paycheck, Bob Sebo, he's best friends with Governor Justice. I'll start right there. And then I'll just keep working my way down. I would love to be partners. I would love to start. And my campaign guy we're going to be meeting with a couple congressmen over in Western Pennsylvania. We got to get all of us together. And we got to start a group, no borders. Want to talk about no borders? No Ohio, West Virginia, or Pennsylvania border, just Utica, Marcellus Shell. We could just be drilling all day long. And the wokies come out there. Well, you want to drill my front yard? We'll drill my front yard. We could drill my store. We could drill everywhere. But let's just start drilling all together. And the governor of West Virginia, he's right there. He's ready to go. He's sort of like a little bit of an Elvis Presley down there, go down the Greenbrier. We could,
I don't know, but the dog definitely is. The baby dog is, right?
The baby dog definitely is.
With that being said, though, that it's not just, working with other Republicans. There are times you have to work with independents and Democrats. Yeah. Is that something you're going to engage with and be open to?
Well, I'm going to throw this out there right now. If you're a blue dog Democrat, and there's a couple you got Sean O'Brien up, and he was a state senator for a while. We did a couple bills with him, and very quality stuff. And then Senator Sandra Williams, she was a Democrat from Cleveland. We did all the Brownfield bill with her. In my committee right now, I'm chairman of government in the Ohio Senate. So next to, and this is I know legislation, I know how to work this. It's work. I had Mike Carey tell me, how you're doing a good job in Congress. Nobody knows your name. I know Newsmax and, being on Fox News or, being on Channel 9, that's where it's at. But it's not about that. If no one knows your name and you're doing the hard work, that's really good. Sandra Williams and I did those bills for the Brownfields. I was so proud of that. And in my government committee right now, I'm the chair. We have no ranked choice block voting. Okay. That was written by my very good friend. You heard me mention her name, Teresa Gavron, but it was also written by Senator DeMora. Senator DeMora is probably one of the biggest Democrat senators in the entire state. In fact, he runs their caucus. He runs the political arm of the Democratic Party. He came up to me and says, Chairman, I want to get on this ranked choice voting with Senator Gavron. My jaw almost fell out of my body. I said, are you kidding me? Why would you want to do that? Because the Democrats hate that. He goes, I don't hate that because it's the right thing to do. You want to fix this country. You want to unite this country. When something's the right thing to do, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, or independent. If it's the right thing to do, and you go before you go to bed every night, you don't know if you're going to wake up in the morning. You might go meet your creator overnight. And if you didn't do the right thing, if you did it out of malice, or you did it because you wanted to hurt somebody, you're going to pay for that. So anytime someone in the opposition party wants to reach over with an olive branch, and if it's for the benefit of the order, for everyone in the House 6, I'm taking that all day long, but I'm not going to lose my values. You know what I mean? I'm always going to be Second Amendment, pro-life, pro-Trump. I mean, that's a cornerstone, but I am willing to work with anybody.
What I was thinking of was the Form Energy battery plant just went into Weirton. It's went up super fast. It's going to be opening. It's
very exciting.
Lots of jobs. Very exciting. Point being, we've seen a couple of those places come to the Northern Panhandle. Is there potential to see what they did there and maybe take some of that to influence along the Eastern Ohio?
We did it in Lordstown, right next to the Foxconn plant, which took over the GM plant, which is the largest building in the Northern Hemisphere. Right next door to that is the Altium battery plant. Sean O'Brien, the Democratic senator, and myself actually drove to Detroit and got a hold of Mary Barra, the CEO of GM, and she has a partnership with the LT TV company, and that's who built that plant. And then we had problems with the federal government, and it's a bad word in my district, but Tim Ryan of the Democratic Party and David Joyce of the Republican Party, we all came together. It was a kumbaya moment, a $2 billion plant making batteries for everything under the earth. And they're doing it in Weirton, and we could do it down here in the 6.
And with that being said, kind of wrap up with this one. It's a big district. There's a lot of ground to cover. A lot of times we see Washington, and obviously Marietta, where Marietta is, and then we see up from your area, Mahoning, Youngstown. They get bigger population areas. They're getting a lot. What about the in-between part? You know, if we think of it like a sandwich, what about the middle of that sandwich here in the Ohio Valley? What will you do to make sure the Ohio Valley isn't forgotten?
Well, my dream is to eventually make my main office in St. Clairsville, which I don't think has ever happened before. And when you look at Jefferson, and you look at, Jefferson in particular, but you look at this area, and this is the area that I'm familiar with. This is Belmont. This is, Harrison County. These are my people. I live in Salem, Ohio. So Salem, and I have 100 acres. I'm surrounded by 1,000 acres of farm. I'm a Farm Bureau member. I'm a meat cutter. I break down cattle. Okay. So I'm humble. I know my place in this world, and I know God's going to pluck me out when I'm done. But these people are forgotten. They're not the fancy, the Youngstown, Warren, and they're not down in Marietta. This is the breadbasket of America. So, I mean, first we start with the farmers, and then we go into the industry, and then we bring back hope. But I would say Belmont and Jefferson County are my 2 most important points of focus if I get elected on Tuesday.
Michael Rulli, Republican nominee for U.S. Ohio District 6, just joined us for an hour of conversation, talking different topics, answering some of your questions and comments. We thank him so much for making the trip south. Thank you for coming down. Thursday night, we'll have Michael Kripchak, his opponent, the Democratic nominee. They will face off next Tuesday. That's when Election Day is, June 11th. It's a special election to finish the term of former Congressman Bill Johnson. They'll be on the ballot again in November, so we will be talking to you again, regardless of the result Tuesday. We'll speak to you again ahead of that election as well, I'm sure. But again, thanks for coming down. We appreciate you joining us. Thank you to all of you for tuning in, for giving us your comments, questions. We hope we gave you some answers and you learned a little bit about Michael Rulli, the person and the candidate. Thanks so much for joining us, and be sure to tune in Thursday night at 7. We'll have Democrat nominee Michael Kripchak. Thank you and good night.